Hey everyone! I am filming this video on Thanksgiving weekend, specifically Canadian Thanksgiving, which is in October instead of November. So I've been reflecting a lot on my life and what I have to be thankful for. I am thankful for my wonderful partner, my successful transition, friends and family, this amazing audience, but also for my living situation in general. I still have my own problems too. So please don't think I'm invincible or infallible, but in spite of that, I'm still better off than a lot of other people. To start things off, I am Canadian instead of American. Most of my viewers are American, and I gotta say that your political climate is really awful, especially when compared to Canadian politics. We're actually having a snap election here in British Columbia before your scheduled election, but most of the news I hear is still about American politics instead. But also, just in general, this has been an awful year. We've got COVID, wildfires, and J.K. Rowling even published a manifesto. It is during these times that I hoped people would take a stand against racism and transphobia, and do our best to support each other as a community. But as I'm sure you all know, some large content creators have decided to take no stance at all. In the fandom, these are referred to as ooh woo no politics furries, or positivity only furries. Of course, it's really disappointing to see someone with a large platform choose not to make a difference in the community. And of course, just like most every other controversy in the fandom, these people just move on without losing any significant amount of platform. But what I'd like to focus on is the common justifications for this policy. Typically, the creator will say that they want their social media accounts to be focused specifically on the content that they create, or that they only want to spread positivity rather than focusing on serious issues. In many cases, this may be an attempt to hide political beliefs that they know are controversial. But these are also very common sentiments, so I wouldn't be surprised if these people honestly believe that this is the right decision. The popular opinion here in the fandom is that the best way to support people is to make them smile and laugh. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that type of content is valuable, and I know that many people really enjoy it. However, I think it's also important for people who are struggling to be able to see others who are facing hardships or who have overcome hardship as well. That's why I founded my channel on the idea of being upfront and addressing difficult topics. And I'm so happy that so many of you enjoy it too. That is how I personally want to help people, though spreading positivity is important too. But then some people take this message of positivity way too far to the point of censorship and alienation. I'm specifically talking about communities that have rules and policies against negativity or controversial topics, such as politics, racism, transphobia, or just general hardship. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a furry who was a moderator for the Discord server tied to a large subreddit. It was not a furry community, but the furry moderator is pretty well known, so you may already know the story. As the Black Lives Matter movement was picking up, right around the start of this year's Pride Month, this community's mod team voted to ban political discussion. The furry moderator disagreed with the policy but accepted it. The next month, they ran a survey and found that both LGBT people and people of color felt extremely unwelcome, even though the mod team itself, the leadership of the community, was pretty diverse. What the moderator realized is that although they presented this policy as a way to protect the community, it was really just a way to get a load off their backs. He had initially joined the mod team to help the community, so when he realized he became complicit in a power structure that protects itself at the expense of the vulnerable, he chose to resign. For the record, I'm not being melodramatic. He specifically made a comparison to the police departments of Minneapolis and American cities in general. My point is that outright banning this kind of discussion is fundamentally selfish. It tells people who are experiencing hardship that what they are going through is inappropriate to discuss, and that they shouldn't expect any sort of solidarity or support. I mean, just in general, this is a common tactic used to create a veil of neutrality for the purpose of protecting bigots. Honestly, content moderation should not come at the cost of silencing people who mean no harm. And it's ironic that while they are doing this, they are also inviting people who are more likely to stir up trouble. But things can totally get worse, and they have. What annoys me just as much, if not more, are communities that allow people to talk about their problems but only in a certain channel. These containment zones are absolutely miserable. Shoving a bunch of people who are struggling into a single room isn't going to miraculously help them in any sort of way. When you're feeling down, someone simply recognizing your pain and sympathizing with you can make a difference. But when all these people are isolated to a single area, these messages don't get seen and it can just make people feel worse. It is the literal social equivalent of a slum. And if they want to come out and be a respectable member of society, then they need to clean themselves up and be positive. As someone who lives in Vancouver, where a simple apartment costs $1 million, and there aren't enough resources to support the homeless, especially during COVID, seeing this kind of behavior in the fandom is super disgusting. And no, protecting the delicate sensibilities of the privileged majority is not an excuse either. Have you ever heard of doom scrolling? It's when you endlessly scroll your social media feed to see an endless amount of bad news. It's obviously incredibly unhealthy, which is why it's important to set limits for yourself. But you don't go around telling people you subscribe to shut up about the topics that you don't like. I have anxiety. I have trauma. Certain topics and situations can be irrationally stressful for me. So I curate my social media feed. I control who I follow, what I read, and when I do it. If I can manage this even in the chaos of 2020, people more privileged than me can do it too. It is such a presumptuous act of selfishness and privilege to censor the marginalized to create an illusion of positivity for the majority. Mod teams should be expected to deal with minorities without silencing them, and I think it's one solid step we can take towards a more inclusive fandom. However, the people who run these large communities completely disagree and continue to defend these kinds of policies. Sadly, I've even seen white LGBT people do this too. So I guess this is another one of those weird, dare I say, inappropriate opinions I have due to my trans person of color intersectionality. This kind of responsibility is why I do not host a public chat group. I don't really want to juggle community management alongside my channel and my day job, and I've got my own problems to worry about too. However, I still try to give meaningful replies when people comment on my videos with their stories or problems. My advice may not always be that great, and there's only so much I can do to help, but I think it's great when people open up, so I do my best to be supportive. These individual interactions I have with my audience are far more enriching than the sum of my experiences in large chat groups. My takeaway from this video is that looking out for yourself should not constitute censoring innocent people. Take the necessary steps to curate your own social media feed and know when it is time to step away. If you have any friends, think about what gestures you can do to support them, especially if they're struggling. And if you don't have any friends and want to make some, try to find an inclusive space where you can meet supportive people. But if you're actually in a position of power, think long and hard about the kind of environment you're creating. I shared a video about my experiences as a person of color, and it lost me way more subscribers than I gained. But that is such a small price to pay for representation. If an inclusive community is too much work to maintain, then you should recruit more moderators. But if you're looking to argue or make excuses about how you want to make a difference but the rest of the moderators won't budge, let me tell you this. 2020 has placed a spotlight on racism and transphobia. These systemic and cultural problems are way too big for any one of us to resolve. And many people feel like we just gotta wait it out until the world miraculously changes someday. But if you're gonna use that as an excuse to defend exclusionary policies in an online furry chat group that you have control over, please reconsider how much of an advocate you really are. Let me finish by finishing off that story about the furry moderator. He resigned not just because he was complicit in a selfish power structure, but because it was one that he felt he couldn't change from the inside. That is why he made the comparison to policing, and it's why many people would rather abolish policing rather than reform it, because the systemic problems are so deep that reformation simply isn't realistic. So he quit the mod team. And this is also why I do not like to participate in these kinds of communities. I don't want to play their game, I don't want to be a part of it. Anyways, thank you for watching. I didn't plan on covering such a serious topic so soon after the race video, but the idea came to me in a moment of holiday inspiration. I hope you enjoyed my weird, inappropriate political Thanksgiving special. And to all of my American viewers, good luck next month and have a happy Thanksgiving. See you next week. Bye.